Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new podcast with myself, Daryl Carter, professional horse racing tipster, and my partner in crime, Dave Young, professional data analyst and regular bettor. We thought we'd get together once a week and talk about horse racing. The name of the show is called Ranting and Racing. That is the first time I've got that right, and I've tried this 3 times. But this show is all about us moaning about what's annoyed us in the past week. But don't worry, it's not just going to be us moaning to each other. We're going to split this show up into some sections. The punting week. How's our betting been this week? Big winners, normally big losers, and discuss any bets we've really had in general and talk about the market. Dave likes to trade a lot on the Betfair Exchange, so we'll talk a bit about that. We'll then have the main aspect of our show, which is the weekly rant, and this is where we're going to get some audience participation involved. We'll tell you more about that at the end of this show because we're not expecting anyone to listen to this first podcast. Another section will be how to be better bettors. Not just us, not just each other, teaching each other how to be better bettors, but hopefully helping you out at home. Common sense ways to enhance your betting. And then we're going to touch on some Cheltenham anti-post markets towards the end of the show. Given Cheltenham is just 8.5 weeks around the corner. Dave, how are you?
I am very good, Does. That's an absolutely blinding introduction there.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it's good. The name, obviously, I say obviously, it might need a bit of work, but I just thought like ranting and racing kind of works, doesn't it?
What's your idea? It's a tongue twister, though. I don't think people are going to like it.
No, well, we'll soon find out. Audience participation, as you touched on, that will be coming a little bit later on. We'll talk about that. But for now, we will be publishing this on YouTube as well as your Spotify's, etc. Maybe not straight out on the old podcast Spotify, but we'll catch up as soon as we can get that sorted. So you can always comment below with any suggestions, recommendations, or questions that might pop up. Where do you want to start then, mate? Because I know whenever we have a catch up, we have recorded a few in the past. They typically always start with, Dave, this is really pissing me off. I feel like that should be the introduction for where we move on to this bit. So what's been pissing you off this week?
Oh, how long you got? We got to make this into a proper podcast series. I can only pick one thing that's been pissing me off, but it's Twitter. This will come up 1 or 2 times, won't it? This will definitely be on this list more than once. But just, do you know what? Right, you put a tweet out there and you are doing it with good intentions all the time, aren't you? Right? You're just trying to offer people that may not know. Some people will know, so therefore they don't need to sort of read it or get involved. Just a little bit of extra information, just out of the goodness of your heart, you know? And then these fucking dickheads who continue to want to comment and just write snidey little comments every time. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. It's not even the people that write those comments that annoys me the most, right? This is what really annoys me. It's those little snakes that like those comments. That's what really pisses me off. Honestly, this week has been driving me mad. It happened today. Just putting a thread out there about, I know there's a lot of talk at the moment about anti-post markets that are not really offering too much value, etc. But it does to some people, you know, they do to some people. Everyone's edge or angle is not the same. You know, just because you or a certain person or a certain group of people can't find an edge in the anti-post market doesn't mean that no one else can, you know, but it just drives me insane. If you don't like what someone's tweeted, just scroll past it. Did you see the video I put up? I was pissing myself laughing at Joe Rogan video. Honestly, I couldn't stop. I was in a real stupid mood today, and I just thought I'm going to put that up just to wind people up, and it made me laugh. If you haven't heard it, this is how it sounds.
Why are you listening to it, looking for things that are pissing you off? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like listening to someone's ass when they take a shit and be like, ew, you farted. Well, what the fuck are you doing anyway?
It's true. It's the same as that Ricky Gervais analogy, in it, where he talks about, I don't bloody want guitar lessons. You walk through the town hall, someone's advertising them, and you get pissed off about it. It is like, it's a tricky thing, though, isn't it? Because racing Twitter can be the best and the worst place, probably at the same time. It is just those things there, in it, where, I don't know, people end up taking things personally, don't they? But you're not tweeting it at a particular person. There's audience and stuff that goes out there. It may be something that's like driven it off-minded, but it is opinions in it. And and I do feel like, especially when it comes to the Cheltenham anti-post stuff, right? You know, I used to do it religiously for a long time.
Yeah.
Then there's a number of circumstantial reasons why I chose to stop doing it a couple of years ago. But like viewers of the Cheltenham channel will know. Yeah, well, that's what they tell me. But splitting up with the boys' mum was like or A, it was a financial outset to buy out the house, but B, I lost a lot of betting accounts with it, right? I don't know, that sounds hideous to go with it. But
You must have been devastated. You should have been grabbing onto her ankles when she's walking out that door.
Well, there is a new Mrs. Mental in the pipeline. So I say in the pipeline, there is a new Mrs. Mental. And with the Cheltenham Festival fast approaching, she hasn't got any new accounts. So I'm going to be setting up all the new accounts for Cheltenham with all the special offers, and I'll do a video on that about how much money you can spank at the bookies, because you get these like match betters and all those that you're telling you how to do it. Imagine being armed with a bit of knowledge about Cheltenham and all these free offers, and then being able to have free reign of every single new account offer. So I'm looking forward to spanking that. But yeah, but one of the reasons mainly was it's hard to get on. Like multiple bets and all that sort of things. And the way I used to do it, like proper pepper spray in the markets, you need to have multiple accounts and you need to be able to sustain those accounts throughout the whole season. If you set up a new account and get closed after a couple of months, you can't get on with them. The concessions are getting taken away, like Bet365, cash out, all those types of things. But I think it's like a whole, like there is still value out there. You are right, that's fact. There is differences in value as well. Like that's why I did the risk part of it, because the honeysuckle reduction from 16s into 11 and 10 SP and Constitution Hill 2-1, I put it in the tweet 3-1, but I couldn't be asked to delete and rewrite it because I'd get told off for deleting a tweet. So I did 2-1 into his 1-3 that he is now. It's the same increase in percentage chance, right? 42% increase. He's got a 75% chance of winning. She had a 47% chance of winning. So like relatively, he's got more chance of winning than her. But in terms of the increase in those two, but because he started from a much lower point, anti-post punters, especially like I would have done when I'm doing £25 a point, I might not want to tie £100 up anti-post on Constitution Hill because the risk of him getting injured and everything's the same as it is for those big price ones. I might prefer just to have like my 25 on honeysuckle and do it. But in terms of like finding value, the Constitution Hill was there to start to absolutely steamroll into. Lots of people would prefer the honeysuckle bet because they'll say, I'd rather have the 16-1 poke that's now an even money poke than the 2-1 poke that's now a 1-3 poke, just because of the amount of capital they have to tie up. But it is different for different people. And I don't think the racing's as competitive as it has been for years before. So again, it's going to affect the market, isn't it? Like you've touched on so many times, especially it's not always just the bumper form, but sometimes the bumper's so shit, the next season is going to dictate what happens with it. So like Facile Vega was short off the back of it. Facile Vega's winning that bumper was filthy. The standing water, the ground concerns, no one expected him to be as impressive as he was, I don't think. And he sluiced for it like he's a proper horse, isn't he? And then you get like American Mike that was next best with excuses apparently at Punchestown, comes out over hurdles, cannot jump. The depth just wasn't there last year. So it's no surprise you're going to get one like that that's an absolute shorty. And it's just tricky, innit? But again, it potentially winds the both of us up, doesn't it? But one, like you say, one person thinks there's no value out there. Someone else will say there is. I think the more conventional, easy way to bet by going on forums and just backing 5 or 6 in a race probably has long gone now. But because more people are doing it, the bookies, they're not just going to give the money away for the sake of it. If they've got 100 people doing it 5 years ago and now they've got 1,000 people doing it, it is going to be quicker for them to be cut. And because they know people will still back them as well. If a horse is too short, I do this so many times in the videos, didn't I, where someone will put up a horse, they won't necessarily advise a price, but they'll give a price that it is at the moment, and it's shit. And I don't like. It's not again. It's never to single anybody out, but like Leona's bet on that Blazing Carl, that's going to throw people under the bus because it's not even non-run of money.
That was naughty. Oh, that was naughty. You know, she's my friend. That was very naughty.
But it's even, and this again, not to single anybody out, but it's like a while back when I started doing the comparison things when Josh Stage of Let's Talk Racing put up King of Kingsfield in the bumper, and I could see the case, all those bits and pieces, but it shortened from 25s into 7s before it ran on its bumper. He's obviously put it up. People are following him in good faith because he's a reasonable judge, like he does talk some sense. But they're them backing the horse at like 7-1 or 10-1. So from the value argument, when it's 25s, maybe it's a bet. When it's 10s and 12s, stay the fuck away from it. Yeah. But my point is, at some point, it was a value price. That just gets hoovered up, and then you just have to just choose when you can enter, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is that value is in the eye of the beholder. If you fucking don't like something on Twitter, just scroll past it. You don't need to go on there and start digging people out. You got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all, will it? I just don't get some people, honestly. They live their lives on Twitter. Okay, let's move it on, Dave. That is basically our weekly rant. You started the show off straight away because you wanted me to get wound up. I can't believe it. Punting week. Let's switch back to the punting week. How have you got on this week? Have you had any good bets? Have you had any big bets? Have you had any big losers? Have you been trading? What have you been doing? Or have you been sitting on the couch doing fuck all?
No, this week I have been getting involved a bit. I've had a bit of a quiet period, to be honest with it. Just before we move on to this, though, because people will be hanging about, when we talked about the rant and people, audience participation, all that sort of stuff. Daryl's going to set up either a WhatsApp group or something like that where you guys can send in a voice note of what your weekly rant is. So we're going to give a few of them each week where people are getting pissed off about whatever it is. Obviously, like try and keep it racing related, but if it's not, if the missus has done something or whatever it was, and we're low on selections, then we might call that up. But we'll do that so you guys can get it off your chest as well, hopefully. Anyway, on to the punting stuff. I've sort of been keeping my powder dry a little bit. I had that bet on Monroe at the start of the year, didn't I? And again, another fucking value loser. And I know this is going back to the rant, so I'll do this very quickly, but that's the thing at the moment. You know, I told you about the dogs. Yeah. There is value out there. They're just not fucking winning. And that's potentially the difference in it. There is value bets at Cheltenham. People just probably don't think they're going to go and win. But yeah, I've been keeping my powder dry a little bit. I've been using horse racing betting data. So I've been getting some data feeds coming in now, or some stuff. So I want to start looking at trading stuff. And this tells you market moves like 15 minutes before, 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before. So I'm interrogating a lot of data with that. So spending quite a bit of my spare time looking at that stuff, because I am more now sort of trading on Betfair than having like stinking large bets, because there's just nothing really that I fancy that strongly at the minute. But at the weekend I think I stuck a tenner in Betfair, and I think I churned that up to 130 quid, and it was just backing horses that maybe, I don't know, like say they're 3 or 4 to 1. Potentially there's a pace angle race where I think they're going to go off and they're going to trade short, or I've looked at the data and I know they will, and I'm trying to free roll those ones. So I'm backing them, trading and running. I don't know, say I pick a 10 on a 4 to 1 post, so I've got 40 quid potentially profit in there. I'll try and put an in-running lay at the point that I think is like a safe get out. So I might trade that so I can make a 10 on that race or a 5 on that race. Then it gets onto the next one. I'll do it again and again, rinse and repeat to try and roll it up a bit. So I've been doing a bit of that because
you're just playing around with some systems and stuff then at the minute. What about Christmas? Did you have a good whack on anything at Christmas? Or did you get stung by anything at Christmas?
No, same again, right? There wasn't anything really that I wanted to get stuck into, to be honest with you. And then because of, I guess like I'm half protecting A, my mental state, and B, my betting bank for Cheltenham, because I want to trade a bit more this year. Last year I had a first dabble at things like Gaelic Warrior, where again, put that big piece out there, that'd have been one for the fucking rant, wouldn't it? When he's a 7-2 poke and 100% he goes off at 6-4, like you forget anything else. Like he was going to go off 6-4, he went off at 6-4, 13-8. It's like it's facts of life, and it did happen. I said it all before, so whatever. But I didn't trade him correctly. I bet him. I left it because it was across the 28 days of Cheltenham. I very, very, very rarely lay anything in running or trade any money out. Like very rarely. Last year it cost me quite a bit because I didn't put any in running lays on Gaelic Warrior, which I wish I had done now in hindsight. And then I took my boys to Cheltenham on the Thursday after laying Bob Ollinger for $2,000. Well, actually, I was going to lay Bob Ollinger. I could back Galloping Deschamps a better bit. Yeah, I was doing all right for the week. So yeah, $2,000 on him, and then trades 101, didn't he? And then my boys cheering because Bob Ollinger won. He did get a dinosaur out of it, but yeah. So I'm trying to focus on a bit more like discipline in the trading aspect of it, because again, getting on with betting accounts at the moment, I've only got a Bet365 that I can put small stakes on. Once I get her accounts going again, I'll probably have a few more bets. Can't be asked going in the betting shops, even though you can still get on in there. So sort of keeping the powder dry with a mental state of I'm going to hammer the crap out of trading at Cheltenham this year. Because again, I stopped the anti-post betting and I value and all those things. Like there's a perception to the way that people might bet that's changed. And there's got to be like a new angle in now, potentially. If anti-post betting's dying, which is not completely, but it is potentially getting harder, there's got to be a new way in for people to do it. And because there's so many people that anti-post bet, I want to see if we can maybe trading on the week of Cheltenham is a better way to do it. So
yeah, you got to adapt.
One eye in for that. How about you?
I've had a shit start to the year, in all honesty, Dave. I've just to be honest though, I've not fancied anything. Like I've not really fancied anything. I fancy one today. It runs at 7:30 tonight. So, but this will be recorded by then. So I can tell you the horse, if it loses, it loses, doesn't it? But of course, a horse called Roscoli on the All Weather later on. It's a 3-point bet. As people know, I bet £50 a point. So 150 on that. So that's probably been the strongest fancy I've fancied for a while. Do you know what I mean? I've had a couple of anti-post bets this week. I'll tell you what, I had a shocker the other week. You know, before the Moscow Flyer, I backed. I went in on. Didn't go in, but I had 100 quid non-runner no bet 4 to 1 on Grange Clear West. Now 14 to 1 non-runner no bet because of that performance. But who did I back this week? I backed 2 this week. I backed Brandy Love at 4 to £100 win, non-runner no bet. should be saying that because it's not with my firm, but anyway, non-runner no bet because I just think if she turns up, she will take a world of beating. I think it's between her and Maurice Rock, and I wanted to sort of leave myself a little bit free to go and have a good bet on Maurice Rock as well. So that was the angle there. I backed Jupiter de Geets as well, 12-1. So I've already backed Blood Destiny. He's coming from 40s into 7-2, I think, on Betfair now. And then so I've gone and backed Jupiter the Geek because I genuinely think this Jupiter the Geek could be very, very good. Like I watched his running back today and I just thought I've got to go and have another bit on it. So I had 75 quid win non-runner no bet on him at 10-1. Yeah. So that's all I've really done this week. But I'm sort of like just sort of waiting around. Like I feel like I'm going through a bit of a patch really where it's like it's very slow. I'm going into the weekends racing and I'm like normally on like a Monday or Tuesday I'll look ahead to the Saturday and I think, oh, I hope he's entered, or I'm looking forward to watching him run. I just haven't had that for a few weeks, and when it goes like that, it just goes like that. You know, a couple of weeks time I'll be itching to get on something, no doubt. But yeah, that's sort of really it, mate. Nothing really of note, but we can we'll touch on this subject every single week, and we can keep up to date of how we're getting on each week. If anyone's had any bets over the weekend, etc. Dave, I wanted to talk about being better betters. So for people that are listening, how can they be better betters now? That's coming from someone like me at the moment who's going through a bit of a bad patch. It's probably not the wisest move to start this subject. But what I wanted to talk about really for the first show is just sort of keeping it very light and breezy and talking about and seeing if you agree with sort of not going against the grain. And, you know, like when the media, social media companies at the race, etc., blow up a performance. So any horse sort of wins by 8 to 10 lengths or something, they're all over it. Look at this rocket. Oh, how good's this horse? I would say that being a better would be to go and actually find out what that horse has achieved rather than just, you know, seeing what the media want you to see in such, and actually delving into the ins and out of what he has or hasn't done. 9 times out of 10, they've done absolutely bugger all, and it's just a poor field. I think rule number one for me is actually going against the grain. And now the reason I want to ask you, because you spoke about wisdom of the crowd before, and I'm wondering how these two tie in.
Yeah, it's a tricky one with that, because the wisdom of the crowd thing is, in theory, you don't really want any subject matter specialists in there. But when it comes to something like particularly racing, everyone's got a fucking opinion on it. So and again, it's like no one knows what the true number of it is. So it all stems from some guy donkeys years ago at a fair. There was a cow there, or whatever it was, and then everyone had to try and guess what the weight of the cow was, and then they could win the cow or something. But they worked out that. But that's it. But they're like, there physically is an answer to it. Most people wouldn't have a fucking clue where to start. So there were some really high guesses, really low guesses, and then if you took the average was more accurate than any one individual guess. So with the horsey stuff, yeah, I do get it, because people won't have got the data or anything behind it. But the impressions that you get is that more people potentially would fancy something than you would think if you actually asked everyone which one they fancied. So when I did the Jumbo one, for example, ages ago, and it was only a couple of hundred people that were in there. Normally you want a bigger sample than that, but that we priced up what we thought the race was beforehand. Those number of people picked it, and I wasn't asking to price up a tissue because some people don't know how to do it. You're getting into another subject specialist matter. But in those sort of instances, the right amount of people in terms of weighting fancy Jumbo to go and win, as we would have pretty much priced it. And that's not to say it will always be that, because it was just one easy lukewarm example. But there's a lot of reliance with it that you're trusting, especially with the racing world. You're trusting that people actually understand what they're looking at, and it's not they've been swayed by someone. Because what typically will happen is, like you're saying, with those videos out there at the races, we'll say, boom, this horse has won. Racing blogger will say this horse is crap time. That might then have a negative effect because the blogger said it. Someone else, those BGP people, the capitals, the equities, all of that, they've got a massive following. If they say something's good and you asked 100 people to vote and 50 of those people from there, their vote isn't the actual independence vote. It's 50 votes of that one person's opinion. So you're basically a bit fucked with the horses to try and do that. But the thing is, with the ones that go and shit home, so say like Facile Vega, right? everyone seems to be trying to poo-poo and crab the form. At least that's the impression that it feels like in the world.
Yeah.
If you actually went and did a vote for 1,000 people, again, we could pop these on yours, but again, we may sway it because we've said it in advance. We could probably do these in advance. If you asked 1,000 people whether Facile Vega will win or lose the Supreme, I would say you'd get 60-40 in favour of him winning the Supreme. And that's sort of the price it is. He's a touch of odds on, or maybe just a bit odds against. He's in and around the right sort of price. Whereas the feeling from what everyone's saying is you'd end up getting 60% of people saying he won't win. But the reality is that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's just the idiots and the ones that have got the biggest opinions are the ones that always shout the loudest. So
that's a great way of looking at it.
You could use it, but yeah, and that's the thing. You could use it, but you're just never going to be able to get the data set for it. I did try this a while ago with the Colossus Bet Syndicate stuff. I did it on the Facebook page, set up a group of people in there that wanted to bet on it. So we had 200 people, and I made them pick their selections in every single race. The highest vote horses did like a percentage method. We put in the bet, and the first week we did it, we got the win 6 up at Kempton. I think it was £97 bet. We got 800 quid back. So I was like, fucking cracked it. Dog shit for the rest of it, because things like Cheltenham, they were just putting in the ones that all the tipsters and everyone was saying was going to win. But the Saturday at Kempton, you have a couple of people that might write on it. Cheltenham, you've got too many voices going out there, and people get swayed by it. That's why when I talk about stuff, I know I'm going to have an influence on what people want to bet, which is why I try and really echo the fact of how much I fancy it, how much is my opinion, whether I fancy it just because it's a price thing or whether I really fancy the horse. And as much as I can be bullish, it's very rare that I would be shouting out have your bollocks on something, because I think it has to go down to someone's individual opinion, didn't you? Whereas lots of people are happy to throw away comments and say, fuck it, it's the individual's responsibility what they decide to do, instead of you thinking this is my advice, I've got to be careful how I word it to some people.
So do you think that when someone like At the Races and Sporting Life and they tweet out with the video of the horse, and Racing TV tweet out with a video of the horse and say, boom, rocket, how good was this, bolts up, do you think that helps, or do you think that hinders punters?
I think it's like very much like a non-event, really. I think the people that are interested in it will already have their own opinion, and if anything, they do it to rile people up. Proper clickbait. They'll say, boom, Facile Vega, when it's run shit, because they know people will say, how can you be booing that? How that's a monster? Like and the people that are doing it, even the people that put some of these content out, aren't racing people in the slightest. You see it when you request bets for Sky Bet or this sort of stuff. The amount of people that get really dodgy bets quoted on bookmakers' websites that apparently go after the traders when it's just like fake names of horses and all sorts of stuff just for a quick cheap laugh. The people that are putting the content out on these websites, I swear they're not racing fans, because you'd rather they put their opinion out of the race and say, not what do you think of that? Or they could say, I wasn't blown away with this because of X, Y, and Z. What did you think? They never give an opinion and anything to back it up. They just say, wow, boom. They're all pre-written tweets. They've done it a couple of times. They've tweeted before results come in, or they've tweeted with the wrong horse in it. They've had them pre-prepared.
So we're in agreement then that to be better betters is to ignore the social media posts of anybody basically trying to.
Possibly it's just choosing your battles, isn't it? Like, and this is why there's so much free content out there, which is incredible. It's hard because it consumes you to watch stuff, but you've got to like study, listen to people, and see how they're going with it. Ben Linfoot was one of my favourite people to read a column for years ago, right? And I don't really like listening to other people's like written, paid for columns. I like, not to be mean, but I don't really rate very many of them as like judges. He was so good with so many of his anti-post stuff. We went to a toasted preview night where he was there for Cheltenham. He was utter dog shit, right? And he put me off of loads of horses. And then ever since then, I just can't listen to him again. And I'm sure I've still got that underlying thing that I'm sure he's a reasonable judge. But it's that from my own personal experience, I've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've looked at their selections. I'm interested in them. I'll follow how they go. If I don't think they're that good a judge, or they're just a guesser, then I'll just move on from them. So I only let the people who I actually like rate and respect as a judge influence me. Anybody else, I'll still absorb, but it just doesn't. It goes in one ear and out the other. Like, it doesn't necessarily bother me. And that's why the people with the big followings and the people that are like the ex-sports people, all that stuff, that have that extra clout, I know the majority of people out there are going to trust them, because they'll be like, well, they've ridden racehorses, they must know what they're talking about. And I'm thinking, like, and again, I know it's bad.
Well, I'm going to have to stop you here, because I feel like we're going back to to Leona territory here.
No, it's not that. I was going to go. It's not. But I was going to go back to the Patrick Mullins thing when he was talking about. Like, they talk about certain horse, didn't they? And like literally the night before he's on racing Road to Cheltenham, saying the horse is fine and working on. The next day it's not running at Cheltenham. Like it's stuff like that. They're in a position of difficulty, I suppose. But you can't have it both ways. You can't take the revenue of people reading your columns and make like some money out the side out of it and bullshit to them, and then the next day like just let it go, can you? And I understand that like they're not allowed to say stuff, but again, pinch of salt with that things, isn't it? If Ruby Walsh or Patrick Mullins says to you that something in Willie Mullins' yard is going to a certain race, we all know that doesn't mean anything, does it? But they could be telling the truth, but you know in your own self you don't trust it, and that's why sometimes when they say things, people read into it too much. They jump on the bandwagon. I think to myself, they need to learn their mistakes. That would be the biggest thing of all of this, just to round it up on the Be Better Betters. The first thing, the very first step for anyone to learn how to do it is you're going to not necessarily do your bollocks, but you're going to have to make your own mistakes. You're going to have to bet on shit tips. You have to follow the wrong people. You hopefully wouldn't have to do it with your own money, but if you follow people without betting, you wouldn't get the emotional or normal devastation of it. If you start following people in and start betting on them and realise that they're shit, if you keep following them, that's your own fault. You'll soon learn who you should and shouldn't be listening to.
Yeah, and maybe that's the case with the with the social media posts as well. You'll learn and you'll watch and you'll learn when they're talking absolute nonsense. Okay, last section then, Dave. Just to round off this week, we want to touch on just some Cheltenham anti-post sort of markets. Has anything impressed you in the last week or so? It's the first episode. You can go over Christmas. Anything impressed you that you haven't really spoken about? Anything grown on you considerably, or is anything sort of fallen off your radar? Something that you may have liked and now you don't for any reason?
I mean, there's a few probably. Like Manila Crooner is one that I talked about at the beginning of the season, but I've never, and I've mentioned this in the column.
You fucking love that horse.
Yeah, but I have no admirations of this horse being a Grade 1 horse. Like I want to see him at the right trip, want to find out more about him, but that's it. Like he isn't a Grade 1 horse. So
he's shit.
No, but he's a dog. He's definitely a dog. And
he is definitely doggy.
But that's another thing as well. I'm pretty sure I screenshot and sent it to you because Kate Tracy said after he won the first time, because I backed him when he beat that Iron Maximus, she was saying the exact type of horse that you want, lovely temperament, always tries his best. And I've literally just tweeted before saying this horse is an absolute dog. He's doing nothing in front. And she obviously rides horses. So even me, I'm like, maybe I've got this horse wrong, but he's a dog. So yeah,
no,
he's sort of fallen by the wayside, but he's going to be one of those that's going to lure me into a handicap at some point. But I feel like a lot of races have happened this season, especially the novices on both sides of the sea, where they've just run against nothing. So we're still waiting to find out. And they're not running against each other. Even at Christmas, stuff's not really happening. Like you look at that one, the race that Saint-Noir won, where I can't remember the name of the other clubs, and the Hollow Games in there and someone else. But like they're shit races. Like Fernie Hollow won it before, the actual top Irish Arkle horse, whereas you haven't got your Dice Up Dynamo Appreciate It or El Fabio's running that race. So you'd expect one of them to go and top. So I don't think we've seen enough yet in a lot of the divisions to have an opinion. But because Dublin Race Festival is just around the corner, I'm just getting more and more excited about that, especially for the likes of your Appreciated Dice Up Dynamo, because I can't wait for that to be put to bed. That when he runs in the Arkle, and because he's the only horse that potentially could beat John Bon. I can't wait for Dublin Race Festival to do that. From a betting perspective, because that was the point of talking about this stuff, it's the only ones at the moment that I feel like it has to be a bet. There's a few that I like, but I don't think they're like good value. I think you can wait till near the time. Do like Hermes Adam for the Ballymore, but you can wait on him. Mighty Pot we've already, I think, talked about on other platforms, but I like him. We'll find.
I wouldn't wait for him though, Dave. I wouldn't wait for him. I can see if he wins at DRF, he's going to shorten considerably. And
yeah, I mean, there's the question of how short he goes in it. Because we're talking to Aaron about this earlier, with George in another like WhatsApp group, and we were basically saying like if Appreciated runs in the Irish Arkle, well, the Dublin Race Festival Irish Arkle, which we're expecting him, I think he definitely will run in there, even though he shortened for the other race, and everyone's saying he's going to run in the other race, but he only shortened in the other one because Betfair Paddy Power made him 12-1 in their first show, which is a rick, regardless of if he's going to run or not. It was just a rick. He shortens off the back of that. He shortens for the Turners Market. Everyone's putting up left, right, and centre. Like there must be some information that they've got, but he must run in the Irish Arkle as far as I'm concerned because he's a 2-mile horse. That's all Willie Mullins running out apart from that one bumper. Let him go and get beat over 2 miles before you start pissing about his trip because he can run. He did it last year, ran St. Sam, didn't he? Blue Lord and Houghton Couliers in that race. Run El Fabio and Dice Up Dynamo and Appreciate against each other.
Will.
And then find out where they stand. So with the Mighty Potter thing, I don't think Appreciate It will step up, but devil's advocate, the only way Appreciate It runs in the Turners, to my mind, is if he gets beat in the Arkle. And there's only so short they'll make Mighty Potter if like James de Burley gets close to him or whatever, or like if he's got some competition. So yeah, I don't think Mighty Potter's one to wait on. I think he's worth backing, but we will find out more at Dublin Race Fest, won't we? But the one I do think is worth betting, and again we touched this when we did the Stairs Hurdle previews. I still think I know people will just keep poo-pooing it, but like Classical Dream, whether you think he's going to win or he's not, you know, when you talk about getting horses in your book, so you maybe back a couple of them, he's 7-1, non-mono no bet. He's never going to be bigger than 7-1. He's not going to be seen before Cheltenham. Nothing's going to come out and rock the market and shit home and make his price go out off the back of him shortening up. He will go off 4-1 on the day. So he's one of those that if we were doing this and someone needs to be recommending a bet, if you haven't got him in your book, 100% have some money in him. But he'd be one of 2 or 3 you'd want to back on the day probably. But he's the right one to be backing now. What's that?
Paisley Park the other?
I mean, you probably should, probably should get Paisley Park and slip. I don't know whether Paisley could win it, is my concern. So I'm worried with him whether I'm better to.
Yeah, because then you've got the conundrum of backing him. He's good each way value, isn't he? But do you want to be backing him each way? And
that's the argument. Like you could back him each way, and I know you throw in the win part, but then you could lay him on the exchanges to get your win stake back. Yeah. So you could just have the bigger price place, but then it starts getting a bit fancy for not be rude to people at home, but you've got to have money in accounts to do all this sort of stuff. So I do like Paisley. I'd let him go if I had to. Like if I had £25 I wanted to bet this week on something, it'd be 25 on Classical Dream rather than the 12.50 each way on Paisley. Because Classical Dream genuinely, I think, could win the Stairs as well. What do you fancy? Anything?
I think he's a dog and all, Dave. I've got to be honest with you. You're sitting there making a case for Classical Dream, and I'm just thinking, woof, woof. Milella, these are the type of horses you attract. Milella Crooner and Classical Dream.
But again, with the wisdom of the crowd type thing, not necessarily specifically
that. The crowd.
That's where I feel like you can tell the types of horses that are probably going to shorten up on betting. And when it comes to Cheltenham markets, because there's so many millions attracted, like you've got a lot of people to talk about, and it's bigger money that moves stuff. But like it's just things like that. Like I know I can back Classical Dream now. If I want to on the day, I can lay him to get my stake back minimum or more. So I'm thinking much more of a trading perspective now, as opposed to I just want to get stuck into a few to get excited because I'm not doing the anti-post betting like I used to. How about you? Anything to add to the Blood Destiny bet in the Triumph?
Oh, I love him. Now, haven't we? I love Blood Destiny. I love him. I don't understand why this horse, right? So we were talking earlier in the show about edges and value and angles, right? So the reason I backed this horse at 40-1 is because, and I'm not trying to show off. I'm just giving you sort of the edge that I felt that I had in the anti-post market at that time. So him and Lossiemouth ran on the same card in France, right? And he ran a 20 length faster time over the same course and distance as Lossiemouth, right? And he came second. He was given loads to do. He made up loads of ground from the rear of the field, underhand and heels behind Bo Zenith. Everyone bummed Bo Zenith for Gary Moore. Yet no, everyone ignored Blood Destiny, kind of Woody Mullins. It was the strangest thing, right? And he's come out twice, and he couldn't have been more impressive. For me, he could not have been more impressive. And I do feel like I've tried to keep sort of my biased big price bet, on the side of this. And I just think he's very fucking good. I genuinely think he's very good. And the fact that he's now into 5-1 tells me that the division, and I genuinely don't think the division is that deep at all, the Triumph Hurdle division. We've got Lossiemouth at 6-4. I'm already sort of armed with the info that I think that he's done a better time than Lossiemouth. So I could probably still argue. I mean, I spoke to Aaron as well the other day, and I said this to him. I said, what does he think about Blood Destiny? And he went, well, look, you wouldn't back him now at 5-1, would you? I said, well, do you know what? I probably would, though, because I know that he's done a quicker time than Lossiemouth. And Lossiemouth is the one making this market. So if I had to start from scratch, but I had the same information, then I probably would, I genuinely would. So he excites me. Look, the point of anti-post betting is getting him in the book, as you said. He's in the book now. Now the one I want to get in the book, and I have, is Jupiter the Geek for Gary Moore. I think he's going to go to the Adonis. I can see him absolutely hosing up in that. And if he does, I would be very happy to take on Lossiemouth with a 40-1 and a 12-1 chance. That are going to be what, I don't know, maybe 11-4 and 9-2. So I'll be more than happy to sit there. And if Lossiemouth can beat that, then fine, she can. But he's the one exciting me. So he's the one that I keep looking at and thinking, I've got to get money at him. Got to get money. So I did. Obviously, I said to you, I did. I had 75 win at 10-1 with him. But yeah, other than that, nothing's really. I've not really gone off anything. I'm just sort of looking at some of these markets, thinking, Christ, I don't know if I want to back anything. Brown Advisory, for example, you know.
But they're the ones, again, where listening to the different contents out there. I'm sorry to jump in. We've only got 1 minute left. But they're the sort of ones, again, where all this free content and stuff's out there. When you see so many people having an opinion in there, that roundup I did of those 40 different tips, there was 6 different tips in the Brown, 6 tips in the Brown Advisory for 4 different horses. So like they are murky markets. The key thing as well, I think, like a good wrap up for the fact when we talked about the rant and the fact that there's no value in the markets, all those bits and pieces. Yes, there'll be lots of hype horses that go to shit, like your Jet Powards, but I didn't fancy him before we ran and he's gone to shit after. But Lottie Mouth was one this summer that a lot of people were talking about. She was 12s in the summer, or maybe even 16s, people are saying. These are the types of ones we're talking about buying your ticket. You get Lottie Mouth in the book at 12s, you get Blood Destiny at 40s, you get Jupiter Geet in at 10s. You can afford to be backing a few of them. We both said we made a bit of a mistake not backing them, but that's the choice you take. At the end of the day, you have a few against them. That race goes, you move on to something else, didn't you? So I reckon we've done as much as we can. Anything you want to say before it cuts us off?
See you next week, motherfuckers.